Okay, so let's get going. This is my talk on automated snap package build processes without the build service. So I've done this on all my other talks. Here's another rundown of my background. I've been using Linux since 97, 98 era. I've got web, desktop, and server dev admin experience. I use all three operating systems, Windows, macOS, and Linux interchangeably. In 2001 through to 5, roughly, is a bit fuggy. I played around with single system image clustering, which is Beowulf style. It was a project called OpenMosix. It was a kernel modification extension thing that linked lots of computers together. I ran Gentoo for a decade. I learned a heck of a lot on how the Linux operating system fits together and how it all operates, and really solidified my keen interest. I used Corosync and Pacemaker, which are high availability techniques, tools, servers that allow you to run like websites that should have failover capability. I've since forgotten all that. I also used a project called OpenHA before I found those two. Since Docker first appeared, I've been using it for containerization. I'm quite an advocate. And I do love automated building, hence this talk. My primary contributions to the Ubuntu ecosystem are Snaps and Snapcraft, WSL2, and Ubuntu Mate. I've been featured multiple times on the Ubuntu.com blog, thanks to a previous PR manager. I can't remember her name, it's Sarah something. I've been an Ubuntu member since 2018 in February, and in September that year I was elected to the board which approves new members. And I'm now a second year Microsoft MVP based on my work for the WSL community. More background. This one wasn't in any of the other presentations. So I'm an author and maintainer of many snaps, including the GNU image manipulation program, where I'm primary maintainer still, even though it's in Snapcrafters. And the Audacity snap, which is still under my own name. I need to get that pulled across to Snapcrafters. Each of those have over 300,000 users, just the snap. So the projects themselves are much more popular. I'm a core member of the Snapcrafters project, which means I'm one of the most trusted, innermost sanctum people. People keep telling me I'm a trusted snap packaging expert, as evidenced by the fact that I'm now a gold star on the store. I've worked with Microsoft. I brought PowerShell in collaboration with Travis over at Microsoft to the Snap store. And I'm a regular attendee of Snapcraft Summits, although we haven't had any for a while due to the ongoing health crisis. And I'm constantly in contact with Ubuntu Desktop, Snapcraft, Snapd, and the Snap store teams. So let's build some Snap packages. So the build service is provided by Canonical. It's powered by the Launchpad.net farm, which is the same farm that is used to build the Ubuntu distribution itself. It supports all the available architectures of Snaps and Ubuntu. And you access it via snapcraft.io, although you can go in by the back door on launchpad.net itself.
It's quite useful.
Yeah. It's tightly integrated with your Snap package admin pages. There's a missing R there, which are also on snapcraft.io. And as I said, it builds for all the Snap package architectures. I think I've got an exhaustive list there. One of the problems is that all your builds are publicly accessible while they're building, which means that your source code is exposed. And there's no ability to add and protect secrets in the build environment that I'm aware of. And it only integrates with GitHub unless you use the backdoor on Launchpad.
And even if you do, there is a very short list of things that are allowed, like the types of GitLab instances. There's like a little list.
Yeah. So why CI/CD? Most hosted services use OCI containers. Think Docker, basically. It's the standard version of the Docker container that Docker invented. They're often single architecture, so you can only build for AMD and AMD 64 and i386. But you are able to have private builds without exposing any source code. And some services, like GitHub Actions and GitLab CI, allow self-hosted runners which run under your own infrastructure. So if you're very wary about your source code or your product leaking, then a self-hosted runner is very helpful. Your source code may be completely private. You don't need to make any of it public. And Docker containers and systemd, which are required, you need systemd to get snapd operational, and you need snapd for snapcraft to be able to use features such as build snaps and stage snaps. So without that, you can't use the full functionality of snapcraft. Systemd in a Docker container is problematic. But what if we could use snaps, Docker to build our snaps in CI/CD with full support of systemd and snapd, so full functionality of snapcraft, and allow for AMD and 64 and Intel and ARM, both HF and 64, with the potential for the other architectures too? Wouldn't that be great? Well, perhaps we can. So we need an OCI image. It must be able to run a systemd and be available for every architecture. I don't know what the dots are. I forgot about that. We need it to be able to run in a fully automated fashion. And we need variants for every base snap. So that's Core, Core 18, Core 20, and Core 22, and potentially others if you develop your own base snaps, for example. But I think I know of one. Oh, look, it's mine. So how do we use it? So you can run it manually on your workstation. So if you're running Ubuntu, you need to make sure that you have Docker installed, although any system that can run Docker, you can use this method. However, it must not be the Docker snap because there's interactions with AppArmor that confuse things. Something about the nested namespaces that it doesn't like. Ideally, so we next need foreign architectures. Ideally, you need to use the latest QEMU user static to get this. So it's best to set it up with the, I don't know how to pronounce that, binfunct container image run via Docker, which will set up all the binary format support via QEMU userland. You've got to run it with privileged, which means that you can't run it in some CI/CD systems. Although I think most of them allow privileged, I don't know for sure. In your project folder, you can run the container, my container. Each base image has a different tag on the container image. And again, you need to run it in privileged mode. This is specifically because some of the systemd setup requires access to features in like the proc file system and the sys file system that are normally blocked by the Docker runtime. So as I say there, it prevents running in some CI/CD providers. However, GitHub Actions and GitLab CI work fine. So let's have a demo.
May I have a quick question?
Yeah.
Do you mean the GitHub and GitLab as hosted by them or as hosted through self-hosted runners?
Both.
Okay.
So let's pull up my terminal. So first, we want to run the container. So you need to make sure you mount in the file system of your project, the location is arbitrary as long as you set the working directory of the container, which is the subsequent command with the -w. That has to be the same as the location that you mounted the snapcraft project into. And you need to make sure you've got privileged. I usually use the RM flag. That's not necessary, but it does help. So let's run that. It will take a couple of seconds. It's a very simple project. It's just a hello world project that I'm building so that it builds quick. So as you can see, it first updates the apt cache to make sure that the lists are all present because the container image doesn't contain the lists directly. Now we've got systemd running. Snapd's installed. Now we're installing core 20 from the store. Going to take a couple of seconds.
Is this on the hotel Wi-Fi?
Yes.
Oh God, you're great.
So we'll just let that run. 1.3 meg isn't too bad.
I was trying to build a snap in the other room and stuff, but she's just interrupting it.
Yeah, in my room I was constantly having disconnections. Yeah. But down here it's more stable.
Yeah.
And we're nearly done.
It's like a weather forecast.
And next we will install the snapcraft.
I was always surprised that Snapd first tells you that it downloads the entire humongous snap, and then, only then, it fetches this teeny-weeniest version. Instead of the other way around. Look if it's not there.
And once this is done, it will automatically start the snapcraft utility to build this snap, and it will leave built snap in the host file system where you launched it from.
When you build this once and then you make a change and build it again, do you have to wipe the state and build it like clean from starting point, like waiting for all the downloads? Or does it like have some kind of cache capability where it's still work but is somewhat less than before?
So if you use the --rm flag, which I showed up in the command line, then it will remove the container image, which means that any installations that it's done will be wiped. However, you can not use the --rm, and instead, next time you run, use start and attach with a terminal.
Ideal than you had before the container.
It's not run the same way. You need to use the start command rather than the run command.
Right, okay.
That will start the pre-existing container that we launched with the run command.
Okay.
But you can't change the command line that it's executing with that alternative, that second start. So that's why I like to use the --rm, even though I have to do the installations again.
I'm thinking like, let's say this is in a GitLab CI pipeline and you can use GitLab cache. How would you use the cache to speed up things so that you don't have to pay the full price all the time every time, right? Like caching for 20 downloads. It's kind of tricky because they can always change in the store, but like just trying to make it faster.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that. So now we're running snapcraft.
Yep.
And this shouldn't take too long, I don't think. Most of the time will be taken installing the build tools.
So is it like a compiled snap, like it's pulling the compiler and compiling something and then packaging it up?
I don't package any build tools in the snap. In the Docker image.
C program?
Yes, it's using CMake.
Yeah, so it has to be built, right?
Yeah, I'll show you the source code in just a moment because it's important to note that it's using a build snap for CMake.
Ah, interesting. Okay. Yeah.
So that's a demonstration of a.
Can do this.
Yeah, that's a demonstration of a technology that cannot be done in any pre-existing OCI image of Snapcraft. Well, it's still going and hasn't failed, so that's good.
I was pulling like all these things again.
Yeah, it's probably pulling the build essential.
Yeah.
And I don't know how big the CMake snap is, so
I don't think it's big.
no.
But it pulls the base snap for it again, probably. No, actually, can snapcraft copy it from the host? I don't know. I never paid
It probably could, but because we're running in a container, it doesn't have access to the host to copy it.
It's because the base is small. Ish.
Ish, yes.
Yeah. Without snapd, it's smaller.
Yes, so while that's building, I'll show you the source code for the snapcraft YAML. So it's basically a boilerplate at the top. There's the CMake part, and there is the build snap that we're pulling in that cannot be done in any other container image. It's just a CMake hello world. We expose a command, and I'll show you that running to prove that it built when it has built. The other two demos should be quicker than this. Although it's good it's taken its time because my other talks were running far too short.
Do you plan to like tag release this as an action on the marketplace?
There is a GitHub action on the marketplace already.
Nice.
Yeah, I published that a while back. And I'll be showing you
With
how
that
to use that.
marketplace action, can you actually see any kind of usage statistics to see how people are using it? And then
I
show
haven't
people-
checked.
I wonder. I've never tried that, but I was wondering like what kind of thing does Microsoft offer for this?
I haven't checked. So,
Interesting.
okay.
And it's built.
So now we've got the next command pre-filled for us. So snap install it. So let's run that. Installed successfully, that's good. And it will connect all the interfaces and give us the next command to run. Eventually. That's provided I write my demo script right.
Like because this should have been quick, right?
It should have been, yeah. Let me just check.
You don't have like you should definitely have the basis.
Yeah, I've got loads of snaps installed. Hello CMake.
Oh, it's installed.
Yeah,
Maybe it's done already.
let's try.
Oh, it is.
Okay, that was the end. Okay. I should have put a done. So now let's hello CMake. And hello world. Ignore that error message. That's because I've got an environment variable for an LD preload in my host. So
All right.
that isn't normal.
Client-side declarations. I don't like client-side declarations.
Yeah, I was running a theme that I didn't want CSDs on. So there we go. Hello world works. So there's a built image using features. Sorry, wrong tab. That one. Using built images that cannot be done in any other container image. Oh, when we've gone back. Okay. Okay. So, how do we run it in GitHub Actions? So I've got an action in the marketplace. I'll be publishing these slides on SlideShare so you can get the links. The simplest usage is that workflow file on the left.
Oh, it's publishing. Nice.
Yes. That uses the snap core action publish,
Oh, yeah,
which
you
I
can
don't
do
maintain.
that.
So, yeah. So that YAML says that on a build, on a push on pushing to main, you can do it on pull request as well, which I'll be showing you in my demo. Check out the code, use my snapcraft action, and that's it. You don't necessarily need the bottom one unless you want to save your artifacts. Or you can use the YAML on the right to add in the...
Do you know that Action supports uploading to branches? Imagine like on every pull request you build it, but you put it to the store in a branch.
That is possible, yes.
Yeah.
That's a very good idea I hadn't thought of.
Would say, would you mind stopping?
That's a very good idea I hadn't thought of.
Branches are so niche. Right? Like,
yeah, that would be a really good idea.
just pick it up and try it.
So if you want multiple architectures, the YAML on the previous slide will only build for AMD64 because that's the host operating system. So add a matrix. I did miss out that you need to run the same QEMU setup. There is a Docker hosted. Sorry?
The bin FMT? Which setup?
The binfumt.
Right.
Yeah. There's another action which I forgot to list in the YAML. That probably means that my build is going to fail in a minute. So my action just requires a with architecture once binfumt is set up. In fact, my action, I might even have the QEMU set up in my action. I can't remember. So let's do a demo. So I've already got a Git repository set up. I haven't added the snapcraft yet, so let's do a branch. Let's just call it demo. So git commit. And now let's, I can't type. I don't want to force with lease. Yeah, that works. And we want that link. Create a pull request. Sorry, I used dark mode. That doesn't appear very well, does it?
But it's okay. I think it's readable, but it's different for different. But it's right for different.
And that should fire off the action, if I've got it right. No, it doesn't. That's a demo that I ran earlier. Did I? Probably got the wrong syntax on the pull request. Or maybe just GitHub's being slow. Now I can show you the YAML. So that's how it should look. And I can show you the previous run, which obviously didn't work because I didn't have the YAML in the repository at that time. But you can see that it spins up 2 builds for my matrix. Yeah. Why don't I try pushing to master instead? Sorry, main. That'll trigger it. So there we go. I probably got the wrong pull request syntax. I did it in a rush last night. So there's my 2 builds. The ARM64 may fail if I forgot to set up the binfumt. And we can watch the output. Yeah, I forgot to set up the binfumt. Okay, so let's watch the AMD64. That just proves that it works. Oh, no, it doesn't. Oh, of course, the failure of the other one cancelled it. Okay. So we can quickly add the binfumt if we want. No, that's not what I want. I want the action. There we go. That's the one I want. Oh, they've archived it. Oh, that's helpful, isn't it? I know there is an action that does it. I guess I can't find it. Set up QEMU action. There we go. Thank you, Carlos, for the help. That's the one I want. Stop selecting everything. No, not that one. I want the YAML. No, I do want that. I know what I'm doing, I promise. So once we've checked out, we just need to add in the set up QEMU action. I think that should be enough. Oh. Let me just check. Yeah, that'll check. That'll do everything. Okay. Okay, so it's run the QEMU action, and now it should build correctly. There we go.
This is building on a GitHub CI system.
Yes.
So available at those from GitHub.
On a public repo, it is, yes. Yeah, on GitHub, Actions is free of charge for open source repositories. If you have a private repository, then they start charging after a smallish allowance. So now it's installing snapd. And this is the ARM64 container. So
Did you try building it so that it actually uses ARM on ARM without QEMU and the whole thing?
GitHub Actions doesn't have any ARM runners right now. You have to host those yourself.
I thought they did.
Not that I'm aware of, I may be wrong.
Okay.
However, they definitely don't have PPC64, and this supports that.
Sure, but most people don't care.
So
But
the AMD64 build is complete.
I think they have, but you have to use the syntax because it's not the default you're getting. But I think they do because I remember playing with stuff I just didn't have. And it's also free, but it's just like you have to opt into using it.
I've not seen any announcements to that effect.
It's been, I mean, that was a while ago. It's just been buried under history. Anyway, I'll check on it because I'm pretty sure they give it away for free as well.
So for those that came in late, we're running a GitHub Actions CI/CD pipeline to build an AMD64 and ARM64 snap using my container image. And the I'll show you the YAML. most containers don't have access to be able to run build snaps, because that requires snapd running, which needs systemd running, and containers are very difficult to work with systemd. And now it's building. So this is the ARM64 build. That's why it's taking longer than the AMD 64, because it's running through an emulation of QEMU. But you don't need virtualization capability to be able to run these builds.
You don't need systemd to run snapcraft?
Systemd is inside my container image.
With the container image, you can't use the builds.
No, it can. That's the advantage of,
Oh.
yeah. You got it backwards, sorry. So normally a Docker-style container can't run systemd, whereas this container can, and so you can use features that require systemd. Let's move on to the next slide and leave that building. So that's it for GitHub Actions. Well, I'll show you the completed build in just a moment. So what about GitLab CI? I've created a similar workflow. It's hosted in my personal namespace on gitlab.com, and you can use it from a closed-off GitLab instance that you run yourself. That's on the next slide, I believe. Oh, no, it's at the bottom. So to use it, you include a reference to the snapcraft.yaml in the root of my repository. That contains the build pipeline setup. You can use main, probably best to use a commit reference so that you don't get any unexpected changes arrive and break you. And the simplest use of this is to use the .snapcraft template that is in my snapcraft YAML to set up your build. All you need is the extends keyword on your build item. And for a self-hosted instance, you use a different syntax to pull in the reference to my build pipeline. And you can do multiple architectures too, the same way we can do on GitHub. And I've got templates for each architecture. GitLab has a slightly different mechanism. It doesn't have a concept of a matrix. You have to have a build.
It does.
Does it?
Yeah. It's kind of quirky, but it exists.
Ooh, okay. I'll have to learn about that.
I mean, it's quirky in limitations, but the feature set is identical.
Okay. I'll have to pick your brain about that then. So, another demo. This one will probably take just as long, but I should have this one working correctly because I don't need to manually remember that I need to do binfumt. That my pipeline already takes care of that. And then there's the completed build of ARM64, so that's proof that it works. So that's, no, not that one, that one. So let's push the same code to GitLab. And start a pull request. I know I've got the syntax for this one right. Or at least I think I have. Create merge request. The pipeline's already running. There's two builds, one for AMD64 and one for ARM64. We'll monitor the ARM. don't know how big the Docker image is, so it's using a nested Docker instance.
Do you have to use Docker?
You don't have to. Podman is currently broken. I haven't figured out what's broken about it, but I can't run it in Podman just yet. However, most CI/CD container systems do run Docker style, so it should work in Kubernetes, I think, but I haven't tested it. You'd need to make sure that you've got access to the privileged flag if you're running Kubernetes.
How come we can't use LXD containers?
Because the containerized build infrastructure from CI/CD providers usually run Docker-style containers that LXD doesn't run inside. I mean, we could set up systemd, then install LXD, and then try to run a container within that. However, we still need privileged, so there's no real benefit to doing that. It's just an extra layer of abstraction that you don't need.
Well, that's a very interesting kind of feedback for canonical stack of tooling for building stuff. The fact that it's incompatible out of the box for the vast majority of CI out there is a problem, right? It's great that it works in both LXD and the other stuff, but the fact that this is not straight. Oh, sorry, forgot. Anyway, so I was saying that I think that it would be amazing if at some point in the future, tools like Snapcraft, Rockcraft, and the other building tools would be able to function out of the box without any extra setup in a typical cloud-provided CI, because that's what people will know and expect.
Yeah, which is why I've had to go through all these hoops to build this container.
Yeah, I mean, this is really nice.
If there are any questions, do ask them. We're nearly at the end now, so. And okay, let's go back to the slides and finish off, and then I'll show you that at the end. I got the right menu item this time. You can upload to the store with GitLab CI. I won't show you this. So you need a file variable in your CI setup which contains the login credentials exported from Snapcraft. There's a command there. You need to make sure you request all those access control list items. And you need to make sure you replace package name or set a variable called package name so that it replaces it for you. You need to make sure that you do reference what your package is called in the Snap store. So that's the slug rather than the human readable name. Yeah. And to upload, once you've got your file variable, that small bit of YAML at the end should be enough.
And protected.
Yes, that's a very good point. I didn't put that.
Like sensitive.
Yes, it should be a protected file variable so that nothing else can use it, yeah. Specifically pull requests. Yeah, so once you've got your file variable in place, you just extend the publish snap, set a variable with the release channel if you want to release it. If you don't set the release channel variable, it won't release it at all. It'll upload it, but leave it unreleased. So if you want it published, say, straight to stable, you can do that. And if you are good with GitLab CI, you can set up automated choices between where to release it. And it will also support tracks as well. You just, instead of edge, put like the track name /edge. And you want to make sure you only release main or your tags. So now we're on to the acknowledgements because we're at the end of the talk. Thanks to Martin and Alan, both alumni of the Snap advocacy team, along with Igor, who's still there. They recognise my capability and enthusiasm for the Snap packaging world. They invited me to the Snapcraft Summits and tried to encourage me to get deeper into the community and more involved. And Alan also orchestrated my application for Ubuntu membership. Thanks to the Ubuntu desktop team, the Snapcraft team, and Snapd team, all at Canonical. They were receptive to my contributions, constantly encouraging me, and yeah, that'll do. Sarah Dickinson, formerly head of Canonical PR, she published several blog posts on ubuntu.com featuring my thoughts on various technologies, including Snapcraft, microcates. Thanks to Heather, who's come in late, unfortunately. She's on the desktop team at Canonical, and thanks to Monica, who was a community representative at Canonical until recently. They've both been excellent friends and encouraging me, giving me moral support, and helping me with job applications. As you have put at the bottom, I am looking for a job. So if you want to hire me, please do. You can find me at Snapcraft Ninja. That's where I consult for anyone who wants to pay me to help them with packaging snaps. I'm available on the Ubuntu discourse as Diddle Dani, same on Snapcraft forum. GitHub.com, I've got Diddle Snaps, that's where most of my snap-related work happens. GitHub.com, Diddle Dani, that's my personal namespace. There's a whole gamut of stuff there. Probably a lot that nobody's interested in, but it's all there for posterity anyway. I'm Diddle Dani on Twitter, but I'm trying to get onto Mastodon because of the current situation there. And as I say, I'm looking for work. And that's it. Any questions? Any questions? No?
You should yeah. I mean, so this is really nice, and this is another question. You should just, I'm encouraging you to put this up somewhere, I don't know, on the documentation website for Snapcraft. So like, I know, in places where people might go to try to figure out how to do it. Mm-hmm. I mean, they will find this, you know, all your actions and repositories through searches and stuff like that. But just the more you have, you know, pointing back, the easier it will be to find, because I think this is really useful.
Yeah, I should probably get onto Graham in the docs team of Snapcraft and Snapd to see if he can help me get some publication up there. On the official Snapcraft docs site would be very good.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I mean, I'll probably, reference this as well, but I know where to find it because I saw the links in there. But yeah.
Yeah, I will be publishing the slides on SlideShare, and I'll be linking them on the Ubuntu Summit website.
Yeah, I think that's great. Thanks a lot, because I know I have a lot of Snap GitHub Actions stuff ahead of me in this next cycle. Mm-hmm. So I will be referring back to this for examples and such, and probably ask you some questions.
The Snapcrafters are already, I'm encouraging the Snapcrafters to use this for validating pull requests that they build before we merge any pull requests into our repositories. And we need to see the GitLab finished, don't we?
Oh, finished, right. Yay.
Job succeeded. Hurrah. Yes, artifacts are uploaded, so we can browse them. That's automatic with my GitLab support, but you need to manually put in your workflow on GitHub Actions to do that. My action doesn't do that for you. So there's a snap. It's 8K. Hurrah! So that's the the ARM64. There's probably one for the AMD as well. And that one succeeded. There's artifacts, and there's the AMD 64 as well.
I have a question. Maybe you covered this before I came in. Sorry for being late.
That's okay.
Is there a way to relaunch the build job without a merge request?
That's dependent on the workflow that you've set up. So on GitHub Actions, you can specify that. I'll go back to the slide with the GitHub actions.
I think it's yes, but it differs how you do it.
Yeah.
Depending on the cloud piece you're looking at.
I can't remember how to do it on.
On actions, I'm more on the GitLab side, so there's a button for it. On GitHub, I don't remember.
Okay.
There is a redo command on GitHub as a button, but you can also trigger a workflow.
You can trigger it without even, sorry. Yeah, but redo is like when it fails, but you can also just trigger it just plainly.
Okay,
right?
yeah.
You can just like build it now.
With GitHub, you need to add an extra bit of YAML.
Like manual, there's like manual dispatch. There's some weird word for that says there was going to be a way to trigger an action just like that.
So where we've got here on
Yeah.
push, you add an extra item alongside the push as workflow_dispatch.
Oh, yeah.
And that then presents a trigger button.
Yeah.
And you can also add in variables that it fills if you need them. Are we done? Oh, we got a question behind you.
I might have missed it at the start. We do similar stuff for the KDE stuff where we have GitLab and we build our snaps on that, but that farms off the actual building to Launchpad. So presumably you said at the start, but why not just use Launchpad?
Yes, there's a slide for that.
Yeah.
The source code can be completely private.
Yes. Isn't this a general issue with snaps, which is that there's no way to get the source code reliably, and that feels like a GPL violation and whatnot?
Well, not quite. If I have the mic, just do it properly. So I don't think this is, there are two angles to it. One is that, if you use Launchpad, it has to be private. Also, sorry, it has to be public, but you're also waiting in a queue. You may just like wait for a really long time if it's a busy time. But the GPL aspect is interesting because deep down in the Launchpad APIs, there's a button that says every time you build a snap, produce a source archive. And this will be done to include all the pieces that were needed at build time, and you can actually get that as well. So there is a mechanism for that. I think the missing link is that it's just not well surfaced. So the snap build experience on Launchpad is either consumed through snapcraft.io, and that's like nice polished only for GitHub. And I think that there's no mention of the source build machinery there. If you go to Launchpad itself and you create a snap package and create the recipe for doing that, there is a button for it, and you actually get the source archives published as well. You can actually get for each build the entire bundle. So people thought about this, and it was lost, I guess, in the user experience. I can only guess because I don't know for sure, but it's really there.
Now, the advantage of this mechanism is that if you've got a proprietary app, then you can build it without publishing your source code. That's one of the big selling points of this.
I have one really useful use case where I would actually prefer to use this versus building a Launchpad. I have a pipeline that builds an application both as a bunch of Docker containers and as a snap. And I only want to hit the publish effect, like the virtual publish button, at the end of the entire pipeline where everything built and everything is ready, and not where just half of it built.
So if you've got it all in one.
Yeah, so I can know this is like, and even before I publish it, I actually test the artifacts I've built. So I test the snap, I test the Docker containers I've built, and only after that testing passes, I'm going to publish the whole ensemble. And the fact that you have this flexibility to have this is just really useful.
Okay, I think we've got a question behind you. And that will have to be the last one because we're out of time. I've actually gone to the time limit.
So I was wondering if it's possible out of the GitHub action or the Docker image to install and run the snap that we freshly created for testing purpose to make sure that, for example, the hooks are working and that everything just starts at least.
That should be possible. I think it will require a separate container to be able to do that. The container that I've come up with is specifically geared towards running snapcraft. However, you can run your own commands with it, so you can just rely on it having snapd running and run your own commands. I haven't shown it, but the entry point will put any commands after the launch, the run call, so you can add in another snapcraft command line, or you can add in your own command line. For example, you can just spin up bash inside the systemd environment.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.